Some of the ideas presented in this Maimer of the Dr. Hayyin of the Alter Rebbe require further clarification, and due to the importance of this matter discussed in this Maimer, which touches on the very existence of God, I felt befitting to present an audio version of this topic. The Maimer is the sequence of the Maimer that the Alter Rebbe builds here is basically separating the two ideas of what we believe about God and what we know about God. He states in the beginning of the Maimer that we know for a fact that God exists. However, we don't know how he exists, meaning we don't know anything about his existence. Similar to one who hears movement and noise in the room next door, who knows that something is there, but does not know what does he look like, what is his skin color, is he male or female. He doesn't have clue about any of his identities or capabilities. So how do we come to a knowledge of God, meaning an intellectual comprehension of God's existence? Most people think that the idea of God is an idea of belief and faith. Why? Because we don't see it. We don't believe a cup exists. We see the cup exists, but God we don't see. But in truth, any thinking man knows that you don't have to see something to believe it. We don't have to see we have a brain to know we have one. We don't have to see our soul to be convinced we have one, because we feel it and we live with it. Intellectual testimony is just as strong as visual testimony. And that's how we run our very lives. All of the decisions we make in life are mostly based on intellectual testimonies. Whether it be in medicine, whether it be in science, whether it be in our job, we run our lives according to the understanding of our intellect, whether or not we have experienced or seen it before in the past. And this comes back to our idea of belief in God's existence. In truth, the contemplating man will see, as the Alter Rebbe writes, that God's existence is not a matter of belief. We know for a fact he exists. How do we know for a fact he exists? So there are a number of proofs, of intellectual proofs, that a person can ponder on. In the Maimer, we wrote 4 of these proofs. One proof is very simple. We witness the world. We witness movement. We witness life. How does this all come about? How is the world moving? Who's blowing the wind? Everything that is occurring shows that there is vividness and life inside this world. So it shows, without having to see the actual life, that there is an existence, a spiritual existence there. We can call that a supernal power. A further proof is regarding the designer's trademark. The same way everybody knows that anything that is designed has a designer, how much more so does the world, the human body, and in fact every aspect of creation, with all of its great complexity, for sure has a designer. It certainly could not have happened on its own. Saying that the creation, even of a human being, can happen on its own would be comparable to saying that a book, a novel, is written through ink spilling and coincidentally it falling into place. And so much more so regarding the entire world. The third proof is a very solid intellectual proof, and is as follows, and it is for this proof that we are giving this audio explanation. The problem with the first 2 proofs is that they really don't tell us anything about the designer. Meaning we have no idea if this creator of the world, if he's infinite, if he's finite, maybe there's 2, maybe there's 1. We know there's something. We know there's a supernal being. We don't know how many. We don't know what he can do. We know he exists. We see he exists. The third and fourth truth, in essence, intellectually and philosophically, conclude conclusively that there is an infinite being, and by definition you can only have one infinite being, because two things that are infinite cannot live together the same way you can't also have an infinite amount of beans and an infinite amount of potatoes in the same room, as writes the Rambam. So these two proofs prove the idea of an infinite being. And the proof is as follows. The most common axiom that we all face in our daily life, in decision making, in processing, in anything that we have to do, is the idea of cause and effect. Whenever something happens, we always look into what caused it. The axiom of science and the fundament of science is that where did this come from? How did this happen? If there was no axiom that things have to have a cause, then there's no reason to research electricity. There's no reason to research how things work, because it just does. There's no cause. So obviously, the human mind accepts in all spheres of society that there must be a cause and effect. And we cannot understand the idea of something just existing the way it is on its own. There has to be something that made it happen. This goes back to the designer theory that we spoke of earlier. Now, once we say that there has to be cause and effect, every pondering mind asks, well, who caused the world? Or who caused the first cause? In other words, if there has to be a constant rule of cause and effect, then how did the world begin? How did creation begin? How is there a beginning? Because if there is a beginning and something caused the beginning, well, who caused the cause that caused the beginning? Why is he not applicable to the law of cause and effect? Who caused him? So because of this, we have a lot of different theories that ended up coming into the world without going into the names, etc. But in truth, there's a very simple answer. We can only apply the rule of cause and effect to something that's limited. Something that has a limitation, we automatically ask, how did you become limited? Who limited you? Who made you that you can only do such and such and not more? Who made you that your diameters are such and such and not more? It couldn't have just happened this way. It had to have been caused. So we search for the cause. We look at the world, we look at the universe, we look at every existence possible. It's limited. It has a definition. It's defined. Whether it be that it's a rock, whether it be that it's the earth, whether it be it's a planet, a star, or the entire universe, it's defined in dimensions. Who defined you? Who limited you? What caused this to happen? Once we understand that everything limited must have a cause and effect, the only way that we can understand and comprehend the idea of a beginning is through concluding that there was an infinite existence that caused the beginning to happen. As by definition, something that is infinite is not defined by cause and effect, because by the very definition of being infinite, it is not bound by any laws. You can't ask who made you infinite, who defined you as infinite. By definition, infinite here means not just that it goes on forever, but that he's undefinable. He's beyond time, beyond space, beyond definition, including beyond the definition of cause and effect. The question that some ask on this is, well, why just not conclude that there's no such thing as time and there's no such thing as a beginning? If there's no beginning, then we can say that there were limited cause and effects that went on forever. The answer to this is as follows. One must conclude that there is a beginning. And the reason is very simple. If there was no beginning, then there would be no present. A person can only reach the present moment right now if he passed a certain amount of past. Now, if you passed a certain amount of past time, well, let's take, for example, Between 5 minutes ago and right now, you passed the time of 5 minutes. There was time that passed. There were things you did 5 minutes ago and the things you're doing right now. So there's a time space that passed between those 5 minutes. If we would say that an infinite amount of time existed between the beginning prior to this very present moment, then how do you ever reach the present? How can you reach a present moment if you pass an infinite amount of time? In other words, like this. If you say that there was no beginning of time, that means time went on forever. That means that there was an infinite amount of past events. If there's an infinite amount of past events, how did you ever reach the present? You can't pass infinity. So that by the very definition of time, without going into the logistics of time, but just the idea of past events, we see for a fact that there must be a beginning, as otherwise we can never reach the very moment. Once we've established that there's a beginning, the path to establishing an infinite God is very short. Going back to the axiom of cause and effect, who caused the beginning is asked. And in order to avoid always being questioned, well, who caused the existence that caused the beginning, we must intellectually comprehend an existence that does not have the question of cause and effect, which goes back to what we said earlier, that an existence that is infinite will not be bound to the questions of cause and effect. And since it is undefined, there is nothing to question on how did you become this way. So in short, to sum it up, the intellectual proof of an infinite God is as follows. We understand that everything must have a cause, so we search for the cause of the universe. We understand that past events must have beginning, so we search for who started this beginning. We understand that since there must be a beginning, there must be something outside of time, above time and beyond time, that created this beginning. And in order for him to not be subject to cause and effect, we must conclude that he is infinite.